talk for the rest of the time about the actual interview questions. So there's four types of interview questions that are particularly popular. So behavioral questions, estimation questions, product design, and business questions. I didn't list this here, but obviously for coding roles, or even product management can end up wanting to see some, or program management can end up wanting to see some coding. Coding stuff is incredibly important if you're applying for a role where you're going to be coding. And that's sort of what they're all about. So if that's what you're going for, learn that stuff. Those are the four big questions outside of coding roles. And the other thing I want to add on here is you'll read a lot of blogs about the impossible Google brain teasers and there's like 15 Google interview questions that will make you feel stupid. That stuff is really mostly just myth. It's perpetuated because somebody posts allegedly Google questions, some blogger picks them up and reports them, and they're all hyped up because they look scary and they get a lot of page views. They're mostly just myths. Look at actual interview questions. Don't read what you see reported on blogs. They have an incentive to hype up things. So read actual Google interview questions on careercup.com and glassdoor.com. Okay, so now I'm going to go and talk about how you solve these sorts of problems. So I know a lot of people know behavioral questions or have heard this stuff, so I'll go over it fairly quickly. But for those who don't, it's very, very important that you learn this sort of stuff. So for behavioral questions, the goal here is to obviously answer the question you're asked, but also give an answer that makes you look really good. And finally, to show strong communication skills and how you answer the question. So a good way to prepare for these questions so that you'll be ready to sort of give a great answer is to prepare what I call sort of a preparation grid. So it's kind of what you see on the screen here. So across the columns are common behavioral questions. And then down the rows are the different sort of projects, experiences, clubs you've had, each sort of chunk of your resume. And what's on the screen is just sort of 1/3 of what I would call the full preparation grid. And you fill this in with the specific stories from your background. And you can download a pretty complete grid of this at thegoogleresume.com. So fill in this grid before your interview and study this. And learning this grid will help you a lot in on-site interviews, but it'll really help you to have it. You can have it in front of you in a phone interview. And so this stuff, think about when you give your answer, think about giving it in the structure, what's called the situation, action, result structure. So what was the situation? What was the action you took? And what was the result? So delivering in the structure can help you give a great answer that really highlights why your role was great there. Okay. The next thing is estimation questions. These questions can really, really scare people, but they aren't nearly as scary as they might seem. So these things are designed to show problem solving or intelligence, quantitative skills, and communication. So to approach these things, do the following. So first, ask a lot of questions, then outline and structure your approach. Then sort of break down the components and solve those problems. And then sandwich check. So I'll show this with a specific question. So suppose you want to know how much money Gmail makes from ads each year. One of the questions you're going to want to know is, are we talking US or worldwide? Are we talking Gmail only? Are we talking Google Apps, so the host in Gmail? So you want to ask these questions. Then structure for yourself and for your interviewer your approach. So this might be, well, first I'm going to estimate the number of Gmail users, then I'm going to estimate the number of clicks annually per user, and then estimate the dollars per click. And that can get you to your final answer. And then you actually break down each component. So you estimate how many Gmail users there are in the US by saying, well, there's 300 million people in the US. Assume 80 million people use email, 80% uses major email provider, and so on and so on. And finally, you get down to an estimate for the number of Gmail users in the US. And then you go through this for each component. And then at the very end, you get a number. And you then want to start validating if that number makes sense. So if you've got $5 billion for Gmail's revenue, this in the US. You'll know that this isn't correct because that means $16 per US citizen per year. And so that's just obviously crazy high. And then you want to go through and figure out where you went wrong. That's estimation questions. The third type is product design. So what are really popular, particularly at Microsoft, are things like how would you design blank for the blind or blank for the deaf? So these are designed to test communication skills, your ability to understand the user, creativity, and the business instincts and skills. So a common approach is ask questions, understand who the user is, structure the problem, and then you go and actually design it. So let me show you what this means, because the asking questions part is particularly important. So if you're asked to design a calculus for the blind, you want to know things like, are it adults or children? Is it professionals? Are they using it in school or work? Where are they using it? And then you want to think really carefully about who is the user, really, really carefully. So the user here, remember, is not just the child itself, but it's also the parent. And then if you're designing for a blind child, think about understand who the user is and what they're all about. So they want to keep up with the rest of the class. They want to not feel different. They need to be able to do input and output. And they need to design for their parents, teachers, etc. And then you want to find a structure of the problem. And this is difficult often, but really, really important because a lot of this is about communication. So find a structure for the problem. And then finally you go through and you solve it. So the final type is business questions. So these are things where your MBA, if you have one, or your business background becomes important, but you don't necessarily need it. So these are very, very similar to product design questions. And you'll see the exact same approach. They're about asking questions, outlining a structure, and then solving piece by piece. So I'll go through this very quickly because it's very, very similar to product design. So ask questions. So if you're asked to design the price Amazon Prime membership, ask, is it US or worldwide? What features are you talking about? Are you talking about what features are you including? Are you including, say, movie streaming into this, or are you including just for the shipping cost? And then figure out, okay, what sort of price structures do you want to explore? Single price point, promotion, etc. You ask a lot of questions, and then you outline a structure. Okay, well, first I'm going to understand the priorities and think about the short-term versus long-term, as well as figure out how much you want to prioritize barriers to entry. Next, I'm going to analyze the financial impact of Amazon Prime per users, or short-term and long-term. And then finally, I'm going to evaluate potential price structures and discuss in detail the pricing for a single price point versus some sort of tiered pricing point. And then you actually go through and solve it piece by piece. So those are the common questions. Remember that you may get a question that doesn't fit cleanly into these or doesn't initially feel like it does. Remember that all questions, or many, many, many questions, come down to basically structure and communication. So when in doubt, you can tackle the problem by asking questions, structuring the problem, and solving piece by piece. Even if you get sort of a crazy wrong answer, at least if you've done that, you will have shown that you don't make assumptions for who the user is, and you will have shown that you can communicate in a structured fashion. And that's at least half the battle. And never rush yourself. Take your time, be patient. This is not a race. So just to recap, learn 4 products inside and out, so 2 internal, 2 external. Find something you're passionate about and do these sort of things in advance. Learn to code, read about technology, do all these things. Prepare the interview preparation gear. This is really, really, really important. And practice a lot. Practicing interview questions, you can find them on Glassdoor and you can find them on ClearCut. Extremely important. Don't believe the interview questions you see on blogs. Look for ones that are actually reported by actual candidates. And then in an interview question, ask questions, structure the problem, and solve. And that's really the key to doing well and getting a job at a top tech